The rain came down in relentless sheets. My bag felt heavier with every step, the straps digging into my shoulders. I'd left everything behind, friends, memories, all of it, to escape a past I couldn't bear to relive. Charles had given me the usual lecture about staying where I was needed, how my abilities could benefit both mutants and humans alike. But solitude was my answer, as it always had been. And that was why I found myself walking this desolate stretch of highway, with nowhere in particular to go. The forest loomed dark and foreboding on my right, and for a moment, I thought about turning in. Just ahead, I spotted a rest stop nestled among the trees, barely visible at first glance. I hesitated. Places like that brought back memories I didn't want to confront. Shaking my head, I pressed on, the rain pelting harder as the night grew darker. Midnight came and went, and the road stretched endlessly ahead of me. The idea of cutting through the forest started to seem like a better option, quieter, safer from prying eyes. I veered off the road, ducking beneath the dense canopy of trees. The rain still filtered through, but the cover was better than nothing. After about 15 minutes of trudging through mud and undergrowth, I stopped by an old, rusted sign and sat down to rest. My stomach growled, and I fished a sandwich from my pack. As I ate, I glanced at the sign beside me. Crystal Lake, 2 miles. The name sparked something in the back of my mind, but I dismissed it. Too tired to care, I finished my food and moved on. A few minutes later, I stumbled upon a cave, a welcome shelter from the unrelenting storm. But as I approached the mouth, I froze. A low growl rumbled from inside, and a massive grizzly bear emerged, its eyes gleaming with aggression. I didn't want to fight, but the bear left me no choice. It charged, swiping a paw the size of my head. The force sent me crashing into a tree, my claws unsheathing instinctively. I didn't want to kill it, but I had to defend myself. With a single powerful strike, I slashed across its face, drawing blood. The bear roared in pain and retreated, disappearing into the woods. I felt a pang of guilt as I entered the now empty cave, but I needed rest more than anything. Sleep came reluctantly. When I woke, the storm had passed, but the forest felt eerily still. I ventured out to explore, hoping to scavenge some food. My path led me to the edge of Crystal Lake Camp. Families, teenagers, and older couples wandered the area, their laughter and chatter a stark contrast to the quiet dread gnawing at my gut. I stayed hidden in the shadows, watching. My appearance wasn't exactly inviting, and the last thing I needed was attention. A scream shattered the peaceful scene, cutting through the air like a blade. My muscles tensed as I spotted a girl sprinting toward a group of campers, her face pale and streaked with tears. The town's police chief was among them, his presence doing little to calm her. Through her sobs, she explained that her boyfriend had gone missing the night before. They'd been walking near the lake when he'd left to use the bathroom. He never came back. I clenched my fists, the implications clear. A lone young man, vanished in the woods. My presence here would raise questions I didn't want to answer. Before anyone could notice me, I slipped away, grabbing what food I could from abandoned picnic baskets on my way back to the cave. I stayed there until evening, restless and uneasy. The bear's cry shattered the silence, just as I was drifting to sleep. It was different this time, a sound of pain, not aggression. I bolted from the cave, following the mournful howls through the trees. When I found the grizzly, it was lying on its side, blood pooling beneath its massive body. The wounds were deep and precise, not the work of a hunter. Someone, or something, had attacked it with a blade. A scream pierced the night, closer this time. My heart raced as I sprinted toward the sound, crashing through the undergrowth. I stopped short when I saw him. A towering figure stood amidst the bushes, his clothes tattered, his face obscured by a hockey mask. In his hand was a long, blood-stained machete. Jason Voorhees. The stories came rushing back, tales of a relentless killer haunting these woods. Campfire legends whispered in fear, and now he was standing just a few feet away. He turned toward me, his hollow gaze locking onto mine. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I saw her, a girl crouched behind a tree, paralyzed with terror. I motioned for her to run. "Go," I hissed, my voice barely audible over the pounding rain. Jason took a step forward, his machete glinting in the moonlight. I unsheathed my claws, the metallic snick breaking the tense silence. This was no ordinary fight. Jason's legend was as much about his immortality as his brutality. But I had no choice. If I didn't stop him, more people would die. The girl bolted, her scream fading into the distance as Jason lunged. I met his attack head-on, our clash reverberating through the forest. His strength was monstrous, each swing of his machete sending shockwaves up my arms as I parried with my claws. Blood sprayed as I landed a strike across his chest, but he didn't falter. He didn't even flinch. The fight dragged on, each of us landing brutal blows. My healing factor kept me on my feet, but Jason, he was something else entirely. No matter how deep my claws sank, he kept coming, relentless and unstoppable. The forest bore witness to our battle, trees splintering and earth churning beneath our feet. Finally, I managed to knock him back, sending him crashing into a tree. Gasping for breath, I prepared for his next attack, but he didn't move. Instead, he tilted his head, as if listening to something in the distance. Without a word, he turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving me alone in the wreckage of our fight. I didn't relax until the first light of dawn broke through the trees. The girl's screams, the bear's wounds, Jason's unyielding presence. It all painted a grim picture. Crystal Lake wasn't just a place of legends. It was a place of nightmares. And I was right in the middle of it. I leaned against the damp, jagged walls of the cave, the ache in my muscles easing as my healing factor worked its magic. My wounds from the night before were already sealing, but the weight of what I'd seen gnawed at me. Jason Voorhees. I'd heard the name whispered in half-forgotten legends and yellowed newspaper clippings. A monster haunting the shadows of Crystal Lake. A nightmare that shouldn't exist. Yet there he was. And now, I was tangled up in his bloody trail. Sleep didn't come easy, but exhaustion pulled me under eventually. The plan formed in my head as I drifted off. Find the girl, learn what she knew, and end Jason's reign of terror. I woke to the cave cloaked in pitch darkness. It didn't matter what time it was. The night was enough to keep the townsfolk huddled indoors, locked behind their doors and prayers. It was Jason's hour, and I had no intention of letting him roam freely. I donned my costume, its weight familiar and reassuring, and stepped into the night. The rain had washed the air clean, but I could still catch the faint scent of the girl's torn shirt, a piece of fabric Jason had ripped during their encounter. It was my lead, and I followed it cautiously. The town lay silent, streets barren save for a few brave police cars cruising the darkened roads. A group of teenagers lingered on the outskirts, their nervous laughter barely masking their fear. They had no idea what they were tempting. The scent led me to a small house near the edge of town. I scoped the area, my senses on high alert, before slipping inside. The place felt abandoned, but the scent was strong. Suddenly, a blur of motion, a girl, her face pale with terror, lunged at me with a baseball bat. My instincts kicked in, and I caught the bat mid-swing, disarming her gently but firmly. "Calm down," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm not here to hurt you." It took time, but eventually, her panic ebbed, and she began to talk. She described Jason's attack, how her boyfriend had vanished, how she'd barely escaped. Her voice trembled, but beneath the fear was a flicker of determination. She wanted revenge, justice for her boyfriend and everyone Jason had taken. I outlined a plan, simple but dangerous. She would act as bait, luring Jason out, while I took him down. She hesitated but agreed, the thought of ending the nightmare outweighing her fear. I left her with strict instructions to stay hidden until the moment came. The town streets were still lifeless as I made my way back to the forest, slipping past the few wandering patrols. When night fell again, I was ready. The girl waited in a clearing near the lake, trembling but resolute. I crouched in the shadows, my claws extended, every nerve on edge. Minutes passed like hours until I caught the first whiff of decay Jason sent. It was unmistakable. He was here. The air grew heavier, the forest quieter, as Jason emerged from the trees. He moved with an unnatural stillness, his machete glinting in the faint moonlight. The girl froze, fear rooting her in place, but I whispered sharply for her to stay down. She dropped to the ground just as Jason's lifeless eyes scanned the area. Then something unexpected. A whistling sound sliced through the air, and arrows thudded into the tree trunk beside me. Jason had noticed me. He was smarter than I'd anticipated. I came out of hiding, dodging the arrows, and shouted at the girl to stay where she was. Jason turned toward me, his heavy footsteps crushing twigs and leaves, and our fight began. He swung his machete with terrifying force, but I met him blow for blow. My claws clashed against his weapon, sparks flying as metal met adamantium. He was relentless, faster and stronger than before. Each strike felt like fighting a storm, but I held my ground. The forest around us seemed to shudder with the force of our battle, animals scattering in fear. Jason managed to grab me, lifting me into the air with inhuman strength. His grip was crushing, but I twisted free, landing hard on the ground. Before I could react, the girl, hiding nearby, seized her chance. She fired one of Jason's arrows, hitting him square in the back. Jason roared, momentarily distracted, and I took advantage. I lunged, landing a powerful punch that sent him staggering. The tide of the fight turned. I slashed at him with everything I had, each strike pushing him back. Jason stumbled but kept coming, his resilience unnerving. Finally, with a roar, I delivered the decisive blow, my claws slicing clean through his neck. His body collapsed, lifeless at last, his head rolling to a stop nearby. The girl approached cautiously, her face pale but resolute. Together, we built a massive fire in the clearing. Jason's body burned, the flames consuming the nightmare that had haunted the town for years. She took his mask and machete, a grim trophy to prove the ordeal was over. As dawn broke, I knew my time here was done. The girl returned to the town, her story bringing relief and hope to the people. I disappeared into the forest, the shadows swallowing me as I searched for my next path. Peace was a distant dream, but for now, the town was safe.